Nice and quiet and peaceful.
That's why we're here.
I should keep quiet. Alright, service 3. To start remembering things like pages.
117.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Let's see, here's the block. Whoops. There we go. Right. We have a minion, just about. So page 117, and let's all stand.
We
for this new day, for morning sun and evening star, for flowering of tree and flowing of tide, for life-giving rains and cooling breezes, for the changing seasons, for the cycle of growth and decay, of life and death. We awake and behold a new day. O God, renew us until life. Teach us to recognize your presence in creation. Grateful for your gifts, may we dedicate all our powers to your service. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for eyes to see.
We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for praise to wear.
We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for the joy of freedom.
We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for power to rise.
We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for providing for all our needs.
We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for daily renewing our strength.
We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for the blessing of sleep and the privilege of waking to a new day. Baruch sha'amar v'haya ha'olam baruch hu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, ha'megulal b'fi amo, meshuvach miflar bilshon chasidav ha'madav, bishvachot zmirot, negadel chavanamlicha malkeinu, yachid chei ha'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai melech megulal b'tishvachot. With the coming of day and night I will enter the covenant of God, and when evening and morning depart, I will recite God's decrees. God Most High, you are my righteousness. You teach me goodness. You are the fountain of knowledge, the dwelling place of holiness, and the summit of glory. Eternal might and majesty are yours. I will choose whatever you teach me, gladly accepting your judgments. As soon as I move my hands and feet, I will praise your name. When I go out and when I come in, when I lie down, and when I rise up, when I rest on my bed, I will sing your praise, and in the company of my friends, I will praise you with the words of my mouth. Malkeinu, Ha'el HaMelech HaKadosh B'Shamayim V'Aretz, Ki Lecha Na'er Adonai Eloheinu V'Elohei Avotenu, Sherush Vacha, Hallel V'Zimra, Brachot V'Hoda'ot, Me'ata V'Adolam,
Baruch atah Adonai,
Havocher B'Sifrei Zimra. And let's turn over to page 135. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach, Le'olam Amen.
Please be seated. We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe, Maker of light, Creator of darkness, Author of peace, and Creator of all things. In your mercy you give light to the earth and all who live on it, and in your goodness you renew creation continually, day by day. How manifold are your works, O God! With wisdom have you made them all. The world is full of your creations. Your handiwork proclaims your praise. The radiant stars bear witness to your glory.
Praise you, O God, creator of light.
Ahava Rabbah Ahavtanim Adonai Eloheinu. Chemla Gedola V'Teirach Hamalta Aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu V'Avur Avotenu. Shabbatchu V'cha V'Tlamdein Chukei Chayim. Ken Tichonenu V'Tlamdeinu. V'ten Blivenu L'Avinu L'Haskil. Shmoa L'Lmod U'Lamed. L'Shmor V'La'asot. U'Kayim Et Kol Divrei Toratecha. B'Hava. V'Ha'erenenu B'Toratecha. V'dabek Libenu B'Mitzvotecha. V'Yached Levavenu L'Hava U'Yira Et Shemecha. Kivanu V'Charta V'Yachedecha V'Hava.
Baruch atah Adonai,
V'Bocher Ba'amo Yisrael V'Hava. And let us stand. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadavarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavacha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibartam v'shiftecha b'beitecha v'leftecha b'derech v'shoftecha ufmecha v'shartam la'ot al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot b'einecha v'tavtam al mezuzot b'eitecha v'visharecha. Please be seated. And enduring are these words now and forever. True it is, Eternal One, that you are our sovereign God and Redeemer. As you were the God and Redeemer of our ancestors, you are our Maker, the rock of our salvation. We have known you always as our helper, our liberator. There is no God but you. Truly you are first and you are last. We have no Redeemer but you. You redeemed us from Egypt and freed us from the house of bondage. Then with great joy Moses, Miriam, and all Israel together sang to you this song. Adonai Sifetai Tiftach Ufi Agi Tehilatecha Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Ve'imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot U'Mevi Geulah Livnei V'neihem L'Ma'an Shmo Be'ahava Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai V'chai Metim Atah Rav Nehoshia Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGeshem Mazriach HaShemesh U'Morid HaTal Mechakel Chaim V'Chesed Mechayim Etim V'Rachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofeh Cholim U'Matir Asurim U'Mekayim Emunato L'Shenei Afar Mi Chamocha Ba'al Gevorot U'Mi Domeh Lach Melech Me'Mitun Chayei U'Matzmiach Yeshua V'Ne'eman Atal Chayot Me'Tim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei HaMe'Tim. We sanctify your name on earth. As in the prophet's vision, the hosts of heaven sing your praise above, for so it is written, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzebaot, Melech kol haaretz kevodo, Kevodo malei olam. Baruch Kevod Adonai, Minkomecha Makenu Tofia, V'timloch Aleinu, Ki Mechakim Anachnu Lach. Yimloch Adonai Leolam, Me'ohai Zion, Ledon Adon, Hallelujah. From generation to generation we will make known your greatness. To the end of time we will proclaim your holiness. Your praise, O our God, shall never depart from our lips. We praise you, eternal one, the holy God. Please be seated. We inspired our ancestors to hallow this day for your service. When upon its coming we pause to contemplate our life, we learn anew that we do not live by bread alone, but also by the spiritual nourishment we receive when we open ourselves to your influence. We thank you for the Sabbath day and for the opportunity to offer us to enhance the quality of our lives. We thank you for its joy and for its peace. Our worship help us to take into our hearts its message of holiness. Consecrate all our days by devotion to what is true, beautiful, and good. Kachenu b'mitzvotecha, v'ten chalkenu b'toratecha, sabenu l'tuvecha, v'samchenu b'shuatecha, v'taher libenu lo'ovtecha be'emet, v'chanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu, v'havaru v'ratzon Shabbat kodshecha, v'yanuchu v'ach Yisrael v'kadshe shemecha, Baruch atah Adonai, v'kadesh Shabbat. Eternal God, be gracious to your people Israel, and in your love accept our prayers. May our worship now and always be acceptable in your sight.
We praise you, O God, who alone we worship in reverence.
Modi manach nulach, sha'atah hu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu le'olam va'ed. Sur chayenu magayin b'shenu, atahu ledor vador, nodelecha u'saper tilatecha, al chayenu ha'mizurim bi'adecha, Val nishmotenu hapukudot lach, V'yom hisecha shebachol yom imanu, Val niflotecha b'tovatecha, Shebachol eit elef ha'boker b'tzomarayim, Baruch atah Adonai, atov shimcha u'lacha ne'el. Grant peace, welfare, blessing, grace, love, and mercy to us and to all Israel, your people. As a loving parent, bless us with the light of your presence. For by the light of your presence, eternal God, you have revealed to us the law of life. Kindness, righteousness, blessing, mercy, life, and peace. For it is good in your sight that your people Israel and all peoples be blessed at all times with your gift of peace. We praise you, O God, the source of peace. There is none like you, Eternal One, among the gods people worship. There are no deeds like yours. Your sovereignty is everlasting. Your reign endures from age to age. Eternal One, you reign, you have reigned, you will reign forever. Eternal God, give strength to your people. Eternal God, bless your people with peace.
En kamocha Elohim Adonai ben krasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'menshatecha b'kol olamot Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai nidlos ve'adam ba'ed Adonai oz ve'amonitem Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Eternal One is our God. Eternal God is one.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Eloheinu, Gadol Shemo.
Gadlu Adonai iti v'roma mashmo yachdav. Let us magnify the Eternal One together. Let us exalt God's name. Please be seated, everybody. Oh, what a wonderful Torah reading to come back to. I think last week something about leprosy. This week it's about the mold growing on the walls of houses. They're asked about the status of the new building.
The old building.
The old building, yes. Now, what strikes me coming back to this fairly fresh, I should say first, this is Leviticus chapter 14, and I'll do verses 33 to 45. So, page 177 in the JPSA, and in the Soncino, we're looking at page 693 towards the bottom. So 693, 177. So I suppose the mold that commonly would emerge in our dwellings if we had a block drain or something like that, and it sort of, starts under the anaglypta wallpaper and so on and so forth, is it sort of goes gray and bluish and black. Is that about right? Anybody who's ever had this problem? Maybe all of you are perfect housekeepers. Well, what grows here is sort of greenish or reddish. I don't really know whether that's climate related or I just have no idea. And there's a vast literature about why it might appear in terms of the sins of the people living in the house, and I imagine, Victor, you might know whether certain colors are associated with certain sins and all that, but I'm not going to worry about that because all of you are perfect. But what is interesting to me is that this is very much an empirical exercise. So something is spotted. It's shown to the priest. Okay, might as well be a surveyor or a damp course sort of company. But the priest gets involved here, and he looks and does a few things, puts it all back, and then if it comes back, then he does a little bit more, and then he does a little bit more, and then if it looks really hopeless, only if it looks really hopeless does he, tear down the house. So it's all done bit by bit by bit on the basis of actually examining it visually. So that strikes me in its own way as being, fairly rational. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't do everything all at once. Don't panic mechanic. Just take it bit by bit by bit. And I think if anybody's ever had damp in their home, you take it bit by bit. You do the simplest solution first, and only if it's really horrible or keeps coming back do you really redo a whole wall. And even then, it's often not as expensive or as bad as you dread. These surveys come up with, there's damp here and there, and immediately, oh my God, but actually it can be dealt with.
It's green with envy.
Green with envy.
Red with anger.
There you go. That's very poetic. So, excellent. Green with envy and red with anger. So, I don't know. That's about all I can say about it. I suppose the lesson is just taking things one step at a time, not jumping to conclusions, and stuff can be solved, and if it can't, we'll deal with it together. So, Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMvorach. Baruch Adonai HaMvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when you enter the land of Canaan that I give you as a possession, and inflict an eruptive plague upon a house, in the land you possess, the owner of the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, something like a plague has appeared on my house. The priest shall order the house cleared before the priest enters to examine the plague, so that nothing in the house may become unclean. After that, the priest shall enter to examine the house. If when he examines the plague in the walls of the house is found to consist of greenish or reddish streaks that appear to go deep into the wall, the priest shall come out of the house to the entrance of the house and close up the house for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall return. If he sees that the plague is spread on the walls of the house, the priest shall order the stones with the plague in them to be pulled out and cast outside the city into an unclean place. The house shall be scraped inside all around, and the coating that is scraped off shall be dumped outside the city in an unclean place. They shall take other stones and replace those stones with them, and take other coating and plaster the house. If the plague again breaks out in the house, after the stones have been pulled out and after the house has been scraped and replastered, the priest shall come to examine. If the plague is spread in the house, it is a malignant eruption in the house. It is unclean. The house shall be torn down, its stones and timber and all the coating in the house, and taken to an unclean place outside the city. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe ve'el Aharon lemor, ki tavo'u el Eretz Canaan, asher ani noten lachem lachuzah, v'natati negat sara'at, beveit Eretz achuzatchem, uva asher lo habayit, v'higid lakohen lemor, kenega nira li babayit, V'tzivah hakohen ufinu et habayit b'terem yavo hakohen lirot et hanegar v'lo yitma kol asher b'bayit v'achar ken yavo hakohen lirot et habayit v'ra'a et hanegar v'hinei hanegar b'kirot habayit sheka'arurot yirak rakot o adam damot umarehen shafal min v'hakir v'yatza hakohen min habayit el petach habayit v'hisgir et habayit shivat yamim v'shav hakohen bayom hashvi'i v'ra'ah v'hinei pasha hanega v'kirot habayit v'tziva hakohen v'chiltzu et ha'avanim asher bahen hanega v'hishlichu eten el michutz la'ir el makom tameh v'tabayit yatzia מבית סביב ושפכו את העפר אשר הקצו אל מחוץ לעיר אל מקום טמא ולקחו אבנים אחרות והביאו אל תחת האבנים ועפר אחר ייקח ותח את הבית ואם ישוב הנגע ופרח בבית אחר חילץ את האבנים ואחרי הקיצות את הבית אחרי היטוח ובא הכהן וראה והנה פסע הנגע בבית צרת ממארת הוא בבית טמא הוא ונתץ את הבית את אבניו ואת עצה ואת כל עפר הבית והוציא אל מחוץ לעיר אל מקום טמא. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. And let's stand.
Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato.
Please be seated.
Very easy to find today's Haftarah, which is from the Book of Malachi. If you've got a Sonsino, it's the last 2 pages before the index. So it's the final book in the Torah, Nevi'im, I should say. Some say Malachi was, well, all we can say for sure, almost for sure, male, a Levite, writing after the return from Babel, so post building of the second temple. We know that because there's one word in the book which is a Persian word, Farsi word. So they use it for governor. So there wasn't a king, there was a governor. And in our section it starts off with a very punchy attack on how slipshod the Levites were in the temple and how poor the service was. This can be applied throughout the ages to how poor we are at keeping up true faith, worship and good manners in life. The very end is about the great day of the Lord. And I discovered, reading up about the book of Malachi, This is where we get the idea, just before Pesach and the Seder, the idea of the prophet Elijah coming to take his place at the Seder. Elijah, who swept up into heaven on a whirlwind at the end of his part of the book of Elijah, comes back to us as a premonition of salvation. We remember that every year around this time. So today being Shabbat HaGadol, the great Sabbath, we've got the expectation of the redemption of Passover coming next week. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza v'divreihem v'nemarim v'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'nviei ha'emet v'tzedek. Then the offerings of Judah and Jerusalem shall be pleasing to the Lord as in the days of yore and of old, the years of old. But first, I will step forward to contend against you, and I will act as a relentless accuser against those who have no fear of me, no respect for me, who practice sorcery, who commit adultery, who swear falsely, who cheat labourers of their hire, and who subvert the cause of the widow, orphan, and the stranger, said the Lord of hosts. You have turned away from my laws and have not observed them. Turn back to me, and I will turn back to you, said the Lord of hosts. But you ask, how shall we turn back? Ought man to defraud God? Yet you are defrauding me. And you ask, how have we been defrauding you? In tithes and contribution. You are suffering under a curse, yet you go on defrauding me, the whole nation of you. Bring the full tithe into the storehouse. Let there be food in my house. And thus put me to the test, said the Lord of hosts. I will surely open the floodgates of the sky for you and pour down blessings on you. And I will banish the locusts from you, the devouring locusts, so that they will not destroy the yield of your soil, and your vines in the field shall no longer miscarry, said the Lord of hosts. And all the nations shall account you happy, for you shall be the most desired of lands, said the Lord of hosts. You've spoken hard words against me, said the Lord, but you ask, what have we been saying among ourselves against you? You have said, it is useless to serve God. What have we gained by keeping his charge and walking in abject awe of the Lord of hosts? And so we account the arrogant happy. They have indeed done evil and endured. They have dared God and escaped. In this vein have those who revere the Lord, supposedly, have been talking to one another. The Lord has heard and noted it, and a scroll of remembrance has been written at his behest concerning those who revere the Lord and esteem his name. And on that day that I am preparing, said the Lord of hosts, they shall be my treasured possession. I will be tender towards them as a man is tender towards a son who ministers to him. And you shall come to see the difference between the righteous and the wicked, between they who have served the Lord and they who have not served him. For lo, the day is at hand, burning like an oven, All the arrogant and all the doers of evil shall be like straw, and the day that is coming, said the Lord of hosts, shall burn them to ashes and leave of them neither stock nor bowels. But for you who revere my name, a sun of victory shall rise to bring healing. You shall go forth and stamp like stall-fed calves, and you shall trample the wicked to a pulp, for they shall be dust beneath your feet on the day that I am preparing, said the Lord of hosts. So be mindful of the teaching of my servant Moses, whom I charged at Horeb with laws and rules for all Israel. And I will send the prophet Elijah to you before the coming of the awesome, fearful day of the Lord. He shall reconcile parents with children, and children with the parents, so that when I come, I do not strike the whole land with utter destruction. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol haolamim, tzadik b'chol hadorot, ha'er ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oser, ha'medaber v'mekayem, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת, על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו. אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Binder on the scroll here before going on there, and I understand there's another new minhag of members taking turns reading the paragraphs. So, do we have somebody who would like to cheer on the royal family? Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Eternal God, whose domain embraces the universe, we ask your blessing for our sovereign Lady Queen Elizabeth and all the royal family, for those who govern our country, and for all who influence the quality of its national life. Make them conscious of their responsibility and teach them to exercise it in accordance with your will. May we all help to fashion in this country a society that excelled in freedom and justice, tolerance and compassion, so that it may be a force for righteousness and peace in the life of humanity.
Okay, the paragraph about the community and the welfare of the community, Alan?
Eternal God, as you blessed our ancestors in generations past, bless now this congregation, its leaders and its members, and all who enter this synagogue to meet, to study, and to pray. Comfort the sorrowing hearts among us, and heal those in anxiety or pain. May we all find here community and friendship, renewal of purpose and hope, a deeper understanding of our heritage, and a sense of your abiding presence. Bless all congregations of the House of Israel throughout the world. Let those who live under oppressive rule soon be freed, and may we all unite to witness to your truth and do your will.
And I think in that way, we wish Alan, you and your family strength. I know Mike is in a very bad way. We give you our love and support.
Thank you.
And also, trying to remember here, I believe Maureen Lubert lost her husband Ray after long illnesses, and I hope she's finding some strength, and their daughter as well. I think in the last month or so especially, we've had a lot of loss. I'm also remembering Irving Harris and his daughter Jackie Harris, who died within 9 days of each other. And if you recall, some years ago, Muriel Harris passed away 9 days after her daughter, and I forget her name, died of cancer. So there's only one family member left, a son who lives in Scarborough, I believe. So very sad. Jackie was a fantastic woman. I don't even think she was 60. And she had cancer and pretty much kept it under wraps from everybody. So very, very tough. And we've had other losses. And is there anybody else that we should mention right now?
I'd like to mention for health, prayers for health, because my cousin Nikki Anthony and her husband Mel Anthony, particularly for Mel at the moment.
And also Mandy, Stephen, we wish you and your family strength and long life as you lost your sister. And we hope your parents are managing, and Mandy's husband and 2 children, and hope they're carrying on. Anybody else? Okay, and I hope all of you are okay. And I'm looking forward to spring, and yeah. So, Israel.
Yeah. Eternal God, our rock and redeemer, grant blessing to the state of Israel, created to fulfill an age-old dream and to be a haven for the oppressed. Inspire its leaders and citizens with faithfulness to the aims of its founders, and develop the land for the benefit of all its inhabitants, and to implement the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice. May they live in harmony with one another and in peace with their neighbours, and cause to come true once more the ancient vision that out of Zion shall go forth Torah and the word of God from Jerusalem.
An amen. Let's go for an amen. Thank you. And over the page, Hallelujah, et Shem Adonai, ki nisgav shemo levado. Let us praise the Eternal One, whose name alone is exalted. God's word is unfailing. God's precepts are right. God's commandments are clear. God's doctrine is pure. God's guidance is true. Behold, a good doctrine has been given you. Do not forsake it. It is a tree of life to those who hold it fast, and all who cling to it find happiness. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. I'm still sort of minus 6 hours. Last Shabbat, I was in Dallas for the bat mitzvah of my little cousin Hannah. She's the granddaughter of my mother's youngest sister, my Aunt Shirley, otherwise known as Shoiki. And Shoiki's now 86, and she's in great form. And one of the great things about being there was that I saw my cousin Jack, who I hadn't seen since I was under 10 years old. And that we had a lot of catching up to do. There was some traumatic family stuff at the time in his family, and so it was really great to renew that relationship. And the synagogue where poor Hannah had to read about leprosy for her Torah reading. She's about this tall, and I think she has an IQ of about 300. An absolute powerhouse. What she made out of it was the question of how do we treat other people who are afflicted with things that we find somehow repulsive. You know, it's how we react, how we behave is more about us than it is about them. So she grasps the basic principles of psychological projection. Anyway, the synagogue is Temple Emmanuel in Dallas. They have 6,000 members. The building it's like a brand new university campus. There's 3 or 4 sanctuaries, one named after the current senior rabbi, which I thought was a bit odd. They have, I believe, 3 rabbis and 4 chazans, 4 cantors, and just space after space after space.
What denomination is it?
Reform. Classical Reform. I'd say the men about 50-50 wearing kippot or not. The music. A lot of the tunes were just like the ones we use here that Joseph has introduced. Instead of a little keyboard, there's a grand piano, a huge choir of about 20 people, a violinist, a flutist, a cantor, just an incredible thing. Went Friday night and Saturday morning. Friday night, there must have been 200 or 300 people for Erev Shabbat, which went on for an hour and a half. And did I see any people who were in their 20s, 30s, or 40s? No. Very, very interesting. Let ourselves off the hook. But putting on really the greatest show, the greatest service, in the most beautiful location. The vanished generation is still vanished. Very interesting. A few little kids running around, I suspect because they had to be there.
What about the Saturday morning?
The Saturday morning, there are several services going on at the same time. And the custom is, if there's a bat mitzvah or a bar mitzvah, in that particular service, the only people that are there are the ones actually associated somehow with the family. So it's more of a privatized thing in a way, which is what I grew up with, which I always found kind of odd. So vast numbers of school friends, Hannah's school friends, some family from near and far, but really almost a private occasion, which is kind of sad in a way because, you know, it's always nice. It's something that should bring the community together, that everybody should witness. And that Hannah or the bat or bar mitzvah feels part of something, part of, in a sense, the routine of the synagogue. Having said that, I thought the rabbi was absolutely wonderful, a young woman, and it was really nice to connect with her. So I just want to give you just a very brief rundown of what I accomplished or didn't accomplish in the last 3 months. Virtually on the day the sabbatical began, we headed off to Japan. Spent a couple of weeks in Japan. I don't know, has anybody been there? 50 years ago? I'll have to say, they could teach us a thing or two. The trains. Let's start with the trains. The Shinkansen, the bullet trains. The conductors, when they enter and leave each carriage, they bow to the passengers. Can you imagine that happening here? The uniforms, the food was absolutely amazing on the trains. And they only have one price for each ticket, not like 52 or whatever it is we have here. So what you do is you buy like your ticket here for 7 days or 14 days or whatever, and the moment you get off the plane, there's an office there, and you can reserve your places for the rest of your trip. Unbelievably, to the second. And in the morning during rush hour, they do hire people to stand on the platforms to push everybody on. And whoa, sardines. You've never seen some sardines. There are special carriages for women because groping is a national sport apparently in Japan. And so women and people that they're traveling with can be on a separate train during the rush hour, a separate carriage. Having said that, the fares are cheap, and those who love fish would be very happy because you get fish 3 times a day. Kathy was going really bonkers because she doesn't like fish for breakfast, especially really fishy fish. The food was really excellent. We stayed in a whole variety of places, with sleeping on the floor, the traditional baths, all the way to sort of more normal places. And I have to say the costs were much more reasonable than we expected. And people were so absolutely charming and helpful. And they have street signs now in English, so that was wonderful. The highlight was going to Hiroshima. And we were met by a volunteer named Victor, who was referred to us by close friends who'd been there. Victor was a baby when the bomb was dropped, lost members of his family. He calls himself a double survivor because he survived cancer as well, possibly emanating from the blast. And he took us all around to the memorials, an absolutely wonderful and charming and humorous man, and took us to his favorite sushi place. And the kids absolutely adored him. And just a wonderful, wonderful man. So this absolute trauma of the bomb, hundreds of thousands killed, and the tenor of everything is how to take the sense of trauma and to turn that into compassion for others, and how to struggle so that the bomb will not be dropped again. And the museums, everything incredibly moving. In terms of history, I'm more critical of the decision to drop it. Easy to say with hindsight, of course. I think a lot of what was going on was to show the Soviets who was boss. And also as a cost savings exercise, because you only risk one plane and one crew versus hundreds. So I come away feeling, let's say, even more ambivalent about it. But the country is absolutely amazing. We went to a samurai restaurant in Kyoto, which is absolutely beautiful. The owner is doing a doctorate in peacemaking. He did his master's here in Bradford, and it's peacemaking through food and the samurai values of self-discipline and so on. Absolutely fascinating. Just met wonderful characters everywhere. I traveled to France for a bit of sailing in the Med, which was absolutely wonderful. We went to Germany, met with the high school in Göttingen. The kids will be joining our kids in Berlin for the KT trip. There I went on a school trip with the kids to Mittelbau Dora. You might remember that's the place where Werner von Braun did his thing with the V1 and the V2 rockets. 22 miles of tunnels underground where the enslaved people were forced to make rockets that came down on this country. And the German high school kids were really overcome by the experience. Really sensitive kids, amazing teachers. I'm really looking forward to joining those kids with our kids in Berlin. I went to Holland to meet with Rabbi Abraham Sutendorp, who's a child survivor from the war. And the purpose of that was to prepare for a trip I was taking to Rome. I was asked to speak at a conference at the Vatican on sustainable development goals. 300 to 400 people from all over the world, multi-faith. I think the political agenda is the Vatican is in some ways competing with the UN as far as global leadership with respect to sustainable development goals. And the idea is that between 2020 and 2030, it's essentially do or die for the welfare of the planet. And if we don't really get our act together, hundreds of millions of people, particularly poorer people in the southern hemisphere, will suffer greatly. And as far as refugees and migration, we ain't seen nothing yet. So the sense is that religions are really the only forces capable of marshaling people and altering behavior. Really interesting stuff. I was just a few feet away from the Pope. He struck me as very, very humble and frail. I know he has a bad leg, and he practically fell over one step, so he's human just like the rest of us. And it was really incredible speaking to such a huge group, and I received very, very positive feedback, and quite a number of people to meet up with in the future, whether Catholic or Muslim, and so on. I met with a woman who was born half Christian, half Jewish, who became Muslim and is the head of public affairs of Islamic Relief in the USA, based in Washington. 2 trips to America, once to gain some advice about my writing, turning the PhD into a more popular book. That was very, very helpful. The second trip was to New York, Washington for a week, and on to Texas. So pretty much non-stop traveling. And really very, very rewarding. A lot to do with eco-peace. And so now I plunge in for the next few months to get you all through the Pesach and Shavuot and so on, and then I'll sort of wander off again for the summer. There's a trip to India where it'll be nice and cold. And more stuff to the Middle East. So happy Kiddush making. So the question I have is coming back to the mold on the walls. Has there been any progress with the building project in Stanmore? Anything going on?
Yeah, we're waiting for
Planning permission, which could come any time, or who knows?
I believe it's scheduled for the end of May.
Okay, the hearing the end of May.
End of May, yeah.
Is there a sense of how that might go?
I don't know, but I think I assume it's got a very, very good chance of being passed.
Okay. And I also am aware that in terms of the transition, that we've been having some Friday evenings in members' homes, and that's been well received.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Any other exciting changes? I feel like I've been away for an eternity.
We've had lots of guest leaders, and it's been very interesting. We've had lots of different approaches and ideas.
Nice. Nice. So we should take stock of what went down the best and see what we can do.
Well, this new minhag of putting it down on the tape, on the lectern, came because Nathan Godwin took virtually the first service, and he just did it naturally because there was no one lifting that day. And I suddenly thought, oh my God, why don't we do that?
After all these years of struggling.
Yeah.
Just like that. Excellent. Excellent. Really nice. Very practical. That's in the spirit of our community. Well, wonderful. It's good to be back, and I look forward to sharing more with you about as it comes to my head. Sarah, I might add, has had a brilliant time in the States. Her internship with the Democratic Congresswoman went extremely well. And because of that, we were able to get a very nice tour of the Capitol building. And I photographed lots of people wearing their Make America Great baseball hats and T-shirts, and standing in front of the White House and all that sort of thing. And we saw the cherry blossoms in full force, which was really a treat. In New York, we stayed in the Lower East Side and didn't venture out, so lots of communion with my grandparents' sort of refugee status, and that was really fascinating. I'm really fond of the Lower East Side. Maybe one day I'll wind up living in the East End. Who knows? I absolutely love those kinds of places. So there we are. Right. Do we have an anthem? Thank you, Joseph. Right, so let's turn over to page 520, and please rise for the event. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, matet gedula li'osei bereshit, asher sam chalkeinu li'ached et shemo, v'gor aleinu l'hamlich malchuto. Shemayim v'yosed aretz, u'moshav yikaro b'shemayim ima'al, u'shchina tuzo v'gopei b'omim, hu Eloheinu einod, emet malkeinu efesulato kakatu b'torato, v'yadata hayom v'hashevota el levodecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shemayim ima'al, yaharetz v'tachat. Lord, trusting in you, eternal God, we hope soon to behold the glory of your might, when false gods will vanish from our hearts and idolatry cease forever. Help us to perfect the world by bringing it under your unchallenged rule, when all will invoke your name, relinquish evil, and turn to you alone. May all who dwell on earth come to know that to you every knee must bend and every tongue swear loyalty. Before you let them humble themselves, and to your glorious name let them give honor. Let all submit to your sovereign rule. May that time come soon and last forever. Our ultimate sovereignty is yours, and to all eternity you will reign in glory. As it is written, the Eternal One shall reign forever. with us and inspire us to live as in their higher moments they themselves sought to live. We remember our loved ones now, for they remain in our hearts. They are a continual blessing. And on this Shabbat, Adrian, we wish you strength and long life as you remember your dear sister Christina Brenner Cohen. We remember Ruth Fiegel Kahn. And Lindsay, we wish you strength and long life as you remember your cousin Claire Gordon. And we remember Elsie Spiegel. And would anyone like to mention the name of a loved one or friend?
I heard this morning of death of Abigail Seal. Some people might know she used to work for liberalism. Really extraordinary, but very young. She can't be more than mid-40s.
2 small children, I believe.
Died of cancer. Really remarkable person.
Was that in Israel?
I think so. The funeral's in Israel. There'll be a memorial service in West London.
Yeah, so probably.
I forgot to mention, you might have been here, but we're in Millertide.
Oh, yes.
You were here? Yes.
I wasn't here.
No, it was back end of the year.
I must get in touch with Alvin. So let's read Kaddish together. Yitkaddal Yitkadosh Shmei Rabbah Ba'alma Divrach V'Utei Yamlich Malchutei V'chayechon Yomechon Chayei L'chol Beit Yisrael Haggalah B'zman Kariv V'imru Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah V'Barach Le'olam U'Le'olam Hayah Yitvarach Yishavach Yitvar Yitromam V'Naseh V'Tadar V'Taleh V'Talal Shmei Kedusha V'Richalu Le'elam Min Kol Berachata V'Shirata Tushpachata V'Nechamata Tamidon Balma V'Imru Amen Yehei Shlomo Rabbah Min Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu V'Yal Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen Oseh Shalom V'Imrulah Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Yal Kol Yisrael V'Yal Kol B'nei Adam V'Imru Amen. Let's be seated. I stupidly neglected to mention one of the most important trips I made, and that was to Poland. In Warsaw, I found the grave of my great-grandmother, who passed away in 1899, when my father's father was 9, and if my great-grandfather didn't happen to have married a wicked stepmother, I wouldn't be here, because that's what caused my grandfather to run to America as fast as he could. And, you know, it was incredibly moving standing next to the grave, actually, of somebody I never knew, who died 120 years ago. And during that trip, I went to Łódź, or Lodz, to continue my research about Mendel Grossman, the photographer in the Łódź ghetto, and to traipse around in the snow. And I met with some academics there who really helped me further my research and photography. And while I was there, you may have heard of the tragedy, the assassination of the very liberal mayor of Gdansk, Paweł Adamowicz, which for liberal Poles was like the death of a Kennedy or Martin Luther King. And I was there not in Gdansk, but in Łódź, and was asked to speak at a rally to give a progressive Jewish voice to the people assembled. And they really, really appreciated that. So I'll be going back to Poland. I've been asked to go to a conference in August to speak about Mendel Grossman. So I'm really excited about that. And the Poles sharing with me that in their society, people have literally forgotten how to talk to each other, which is quite sad. So there is a role for progressive Judaism in Poland, and our voice is valued. So, Adon Olam.
Adon Olam, Hashem Allah, V'teru kol yitzir nivra, V'etnasah, V'chetzoko, Azay melech shemo nikra, Adon Olam, Hashem Allah, V'teru kol yitzir nivra, V'etnasah,
Thank you, boys. Is it time to go downstairs?
Yes, time downstairs, but first of all, let me, on behalf of the entire community, welcome you back. It's lovely to have you back.
Thank you,
And
Jim.
we're going to lose you again in a couple of months, aren't we?
Yeah, well, then I'll be back to bore you at High Holy Days.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome back.
Thank you.
Is it downstairs?
Downstairs.
Downstairs today? Downstairs.
So how long will you be here?
I'll be here till the end of June,
Oh, the end of June.
when you both are coming to Berlin. I'm not going to stop nagging you.
The end of my abroad travelling.
Not even by train.
At least you know you can take
They're like computer and wash, and the seat moves up and down. There's all these buttons for female washing, male washing. Some people put up cards telling you what was
Not in my hotel, so I didn't like to.
Surviving.
Good
to see you. That's all you're going to do when you go away again.
End of June, and then I'll be back at the beginning of September.
That's what you're next.
Yeah, I'll be in
Yes, sorry.
Personally, I think it's
Yeah? Yeah.
So it'll be warm.
It'll be hot as anything.
I say, where are you living now?
Yes.
The other yeah, exactly, same as me. He was same as me. He lived in Mosaic, and he died 2 days after his 100th.